Sounds pretty good.
I'm recording now, so watch your P's and Q's now.
Oh,
Yeah, that's cool, Darren. Elaine, we can hear you.
good-ish.
Is that you
Dave.
barking, Elaine?
You know, I might be. I was in Louisiana for a few days, and holy smokes, that between the heat and the mosquitoes, I'm not sure what was worse.
You mean
Like
you
home-
don't
like home, huh?
regret leaving?
What's that?
You don't regret leaving?
Oh man.
Nothing like home.
That's right.
I came back. My husband's like, "Did you get leprosy while you were down there? What the hell? I got so many damn mosquito bites."
Oh, no.
Oh.
Today I saw a car that had the license plate Raging Cajun on it, or RGN, yeah,
Yeah, there's a few of us
CGN.
out here.
Yeah, I lived in Lafayette for a while, so yeah, it was fun.
But I got some nice drone pics of my mom and dad's place, and some grocery replacements. So
Ready to cook the meals.
Right.
All right, you guys ready to go ahead and get started then?
Yeah, we're ready. Whenever
Okay.
you are.
All right, so welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. We're doing a special, I say, because we haven't done this before. Basically taking a raw image all the way through finished. Basically, the photographer will show you the raw image that they started with, explain what they did, and then show you the finished image. So Bruce will go into more of that here in a few. Upcoming meetings and events. This Sunday is the print workshop with Art Bela. I think we have a couple spots left. There is info about it on our website if anybody is interested. And you will be able to take home a print from that workshop. Next meeting will be on June 1st. It's going to be an exhibition night. June 15th is a presentation night. Jim Griggs will be talking about video for still photographers. And then July 6th is our next competition night, and it's going to be a themed night with motion and long exposures. So shoot your fireworks pics and get to editing quick so you can submit them.
1/8 of a second.
And then July 20th, we're doing our annual Scavenger Hunt meeting, where we give you a list of things to shoot, and you can interpret that list as you see fit to make photographs that night. And then we submit them all and judge and critique them. And
Yeah, I'll probably have to do the judging on the 27th, so
okay.
I'll get that out.
And usually there's a membership or two that are included as prizes for the scavenger hunt. So try and make it worth your while.
Yeah, I gotta put it together. So.
Other than that, that's about all I've got to start out tonight. Unless you guys have any other announcements, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce and let's get this show on the road. I'm excited to see this. It's gonna be fun.
I just want to put a personal plug in for Art Bela's workshop on the printing, because I've been to Art's house personally, and you can't imagine all the equipment he has, and the catalogs and the papers, and it's just amazing. He's truly fantastic at printing. So if you ever really wanted to have any sort of knowledge on printing, make sure you jump in on that for sure.
Yeah.
Art, do you have anything to say about that?
No, there are slots available, and we're going to cover a lot in a short time, but I've been working on the presentation, and I think we can all get it in and give everybody some resources to print. But Also, whether you print yourself or have it professionally printed outside, we're going to talk about economical ways of displaying prints, and what makes an appropriate wall display, when do you want to use a smaller folio, portfolio, that type of thing. So it's going to be kind of a all-encompassing view on printing and what do you do with the print when you've got it.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so we're gonna start, and basically I'll show two images side by side, and if the maker can tell me what they want to do, and if you as the person who submitted, we have 10 people submitted. If you want me to let you share your screen so you can show some things on there, from your desktop, that's great. Whatever you want to do, but let me know what you want to do. So we're going to start off with, let me share my screen. And we're going to start off with Michael Rhino. And I'm going to do this. Hang on a second. I'm going to do oops, that one and that one. And there is the before and after. I'm going to shut off my video. There you go.
All right, so I have to kick this off, huh? Let's see.
Good luck in the
Sure. No, so here's the story on that. I'll just kind of give a little bit of the background of it before I go into the processing side of it. So I was out in Sedona, Arizona. My wife and I were out there a few weeks ago, I guess it was now. And so I got up early in the morning. She was still sleeping, but I got up and went for a hike and came across this scene. I was kind of, again, from a composition standpoint, trying to find something where I can get something hopefully of interest in the foreground. And then the sun was just starting to come up and touch some of those rocks back in the peak. But some of the light was also starting to kind of leak through a little bit towards some of the cacti, I guess it is, here in the foreground in that. So now I'll go through some of what the processing was. First of all, I started by going, my normal workflow is to go into Lightroom and then Photoshop, and I make some light adjustments there. And in this case, I didn't like as much what I was getting out of that, out of the Lightroom side of it. I guess the same thing could be said for Adobe Camera Raw. So I experimented a little bit. I also have Capture One. And so I did my raw editing here in Capture One versus Lightroom. But the two really aren't too much different. They just have a little bit of other things that I can do over in Capture One. So here's just kind of describing a little bit of some of the global adjustments just to the image without going into different parts of it. And that is I reduced the highlights a little bit to bring the sky down a little bit, although in my finished image, it looks like that sky is still pretty bright. Also increase the shadows that kind of help bring out some definition in that in the foreground elements. Increase the contrast. I think, just moving the slider by about maybe, 15 or so, something like that to the right. And in Capture One, there's also a levels table, and it has an auto adjust button that usually gets you pretty close to it to kind of, bringing out some of the levels and the highlights and shadows and that. So I clicked on that. And then they have a curves table similar to what Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw have. So on the curves, I just did a light S curve, meaning over on the right side of the curve, I kind of bent the curve up a little bit, and then over in the shadow side of it over to the left, I took it down a little bit just to give a little bit more contrast to certain sections in there. And then Capture One also has a color editor, not too different from what they have over in Photoshop and that, but in the color editor, I went through and sampled a couple of colors and then brought up the lightness in those. So a couple of the colors that I was picking out in particular were some of the reds from back in the red rocks, and I would sample a section of that and then bring up the brightness of it. And then I did the same thing with the greens. And it's interesting, like if you look at the finished image over there, you can kind of see on the cacti or whatever, and that over to the right, you can see where certain parts of it that were angled a little bit more over to the sun took on a bit more of the a bit more brightness whenever I was doing that. So it wasn't necessarily intentional, but it kind of gave a little bit more contrast between the ones that were being hit by light and the ones that were not being hit by light. And then over in Capture One, they also have the ability to put different layers in there, and that a little bit, I guess fairly similar. We were talking earlier about how Lightroom has added some of those capabilities, and Capture One does that also. So I created a couple of adjustment layers, and then within there, they have what they call Luma Range, which is some luminosity masking. So I did a little bit of that, just again, kind of adjusting a little bit of the exposure in the sky, and then also used on the luminosity side of it, making some contrast and brighter sections within the foreground. And then from there, again, that was all in Capture One. That's why I did most of that raw processing. They also have the ability to bring it over into Photoshop. So I did that. And then over in there, I also did a little bit of luminosity masking up in those rocks. I was brightening just on the lighter sections of the rocks, bringing up a little bit of the luminosity, trying to get a little bit more depth into some of that. And then I went into the Nik Color Effects Pro. So I brought that in, a plugin into Photoshop. And within Color Effects Pro, I've created my own preset that doesn't always work, but I usually kind of start with it anyways. And within it, there's like a few of their different menu options, I guess, that they have. And so my preset has, I used the polarization one, just a little bit of a light adjustment in that, the brilliance / warmth feature. And I just have a little bit of added warmth that I use out of that one. And then tonal contrast. And on tonal contrast, I just have, I think there's 3 sliders within that one, and I just have them move slightly, not real aggressively. And so that was it for that processing. And then the final step that I did was another plugin that I use is the Topaz Denoise AI, artificial intelligence, I guess is what that is, the AI part of it. And so I use that, and it does a little bit of the noise reduction and sharpening within it. So that's how I ended up with the final image. So it may be a little bit over processed. I don't know, when I look at it. I really didn't push saturation very much in that, although it looks like, when you look at the before and after, there's quite a bit of what looks like saturation in there, but I didn't intentionally push any of those, the saturation sliders very much. A little bit of vibrance, but not really saturation. So that was my post-processing description for this one.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? I know it's kind of hard to see when you're looking at screens, but maybe next time we'll do more screen sharing. So, okay, so the next one is Chuck. And this one, Best in Show at the Lone Tree Photo Club show.
Yeah, this one's won now a couple awards. It did take Best in Show at Lone Tree, and it took 2nd place in the Aurora show a few months ago, like earlier in the year. So this is a tree that we found on a December trip into Kansas. So this is out in the pasture, and there was a old barn to the left of it that we stopped at to kind of check out and check off the list. And this is a little ways out in the field, and so I looked at the barn and kind of, it didn't jump out at me, and I kind of glanced over and saw this tree, and I was like, oh, if you need me, I'm going to be over here, because I saw this what the finished image is as I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be the perfect thing for this. I want to try this because I hadn't done one of these images before. And so, middle of December, everything's dead and brown, right? They're looking at the raw image. There's not really, other than the shape of the tree, there's not really anything to the image. And so what I did, right off the bat, I started out and opened up Silver FX Pro and went right away to one of the high key presets. And that's where I started. And setting that preset, for the most part, washed out all the ground except for the really dark spots. So that the shadow underneath the tree obviously is still there in the finished image. And then like the bushes back there in the back right, there was a little bit of detail left in the grass, and I worked on that as I processed. And so as far as the settings in it, I basically kept the default for the high key, and then took it back into Photoshop and used the content aware brushes, and basically got rid of the bushes, got rid of some of the dark spots in the grass that kind of stood out, and then played with an exposure mask. I created like a luminosity mask with the rest of the ground, and reduced exposure on it just to kind of brush more of it away. Because it was after it moved into the high key, it really lost interest, and it was kind of almost just in the way. And so after doing some digital landscaping and cleaning up, I used in Color Effects Pro, I used tonal contrast as a finishing edit on it, and I pulled the opacity of it down. I usually run that opacity down around 35%, just to give a little more detail in the shadows, and it gave the branches of the tree almost like a pencil sketch feel, and so I really like that added touch to it. And then to finish it off, I just took it into denoise AI from Topaz and ran it through there just to make sure that I didn't have any noise artifacts through it from processing. But all this image actually only took me about 15-20 minutes to go from start to finish. It's really a super simple edit, and I think it had a huge impact on the finished, and it's caught some people's attention. Like Bruce said, it's won Best of Show now, and I've gotten a couple of awards out of it, so I'm pleased with the results.
Yeah, and I can see it. It looks, looking at the screen, you didn't even crop it.
No, I leveled off the shadow a little bit, to get it to kind of that way I didn't have to really fight with the shadow, and that was basically my horizontal line was the shadow of the tree. So all I did was kind of tilt it a little bit just to level it off, so that way that wasn't distracting and off at an angle. But yeah, that's basically all I did to it as far as that goes.
Any questions from anybody?
Yeah, I'll say so. I've seen the image, the award-winning image a few times or whatever, and that was always amazed by it. But I'm glad we're doing this, because I would have never guessed that your initial capture was that one that we see over there on the left. I just assumed that you caught it in that somewhat high key environment, real, say, bright sky or real light sky, and then enhanced it from there. I would have never guessed that you could have got it from what you have there on the left to get it to that high key effect in that. So thanks for sharing how you did that.
That high key in Silver Effects is really powerful, and I was actually surprised at how how quickly it turned to this, and how, quick I was able to get rid of a lot of the artifacts in it that I didn't want. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, when I saw the tree, I was like, oh man, I want to make this a high key black and white.
Right.
And Darren was the one with me, and he was the one who was like, hey, we got to stop at this barn. And we kind of joked about it later. I was like, yeah, good stop. I don't even remember the barn.
There's not much to remember.
Like I said, I saw this tree and I was like, I'll be over here if you need me.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So in Silver Effects Pro, do you just do the high key effect, or do you then go into the color filters to try to perfect the match with the colors at all?
On this one, I honestly didn't. I hit the default and I was like, cool, that got me what I wanted. And I was in and out of Silver Effects, and I mean, it took me seconds. I mean, I didn't change any of the settings. I hit it and it happened to be, I mean, a lot of times you can play with the filters to kind of, like you were talking about, get certain colors that do more or less. But if you look at the raw image, it's kind of drab, right? There's not really, no colors are really popping out. And so it all just kind of fell together. I mean, it all, the background all kind of just blurred out together. It was actually really easy to process.
Amazing picture, Chuck.
And you mentioned that you did some luminosity masking after the Silver Effects Pro. Did you have to use some of that to further whiten the, I'll say, sky in the area, or was that Silver Effects Pro did most of that?
It did most of it. The area where I kind of played with the luminosity masking to lighten it even further was the horizon line behind the tree and those clouds right there on the horizon.
Right.
The ones on the left side kind of stuck around, but it was kind of like they kind of ghosted. And so it almost looked like smudges behind the image. And so it was a little distracting. And rather than try and do content aware, I just kind of started playing with exposure. And what it did was also allow me to, down in front of the shadow, it allowed me to kind of blend out some of the grass. Was actually, you could actually see like ghosting of some of the grass blades.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped me get rid of that ghosting too.
I think I've learned something here. You said that you went into like topaz noise to try to knock down some of the crunchiness or whatever in the surrounding. I mean, I've never thought of even doing that. I mean, I've come up with a number of pictures where I was just dissatisfied of how much I sharpened it or whatever, just in a sky or something. But using that noise filter at the very end would knock it down. That's a brilliant idea.
So topaz denoise, you can when you go in there and you tell it to, you can adjust the layer, how much noise you want to reduce, and then you also have the option to introduce back some sharpness, because you lose a little bit of sharpness when you denoise something. And then you also have, there's a slider for basically restoring original detail. And for the most part, I leave the sharpness and the original detail sliders way down, because all I'm trying to do is just take the noise out just a little bit, right? I'm not trying to overkill it.
Sure.
But in this image, I played with it a little bit, and I was able to, like I said, I sharpened it up just that way. It gave a little bit more back in the branches. And it was ever so slight, because I mean, it was shot in broad daylight in the middle of the day. And so, I mean, I was already shooting at 100 ISO. And so there wasn't really a whole lot of noise to deal with, but it was more of just getting rid of the little artifacts that came with processing it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea.
That's a denoise is a powerful, powerful tool. I mean, it's,
Yeah, I've done a lot of different denoises, and that particular one just kicks everybody's butt, it seems. But I hadn't actually ever thought about using it in that manner. So I've
Yep.
learned something here tonight.
okay, we're done here.
We can go home.
Great job
Next week.
visualizing that one though. That's nice.
Yeah, like I said, I walked over to it and I was like, oh, I got this. This is exactly what I want with this. And Darren and I talked before we got back in our cars, and I was like, I can already see this one. I said, this is going to be my shot from the trip. So
Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
thanks. Next is Art. Art, you can, this is your image, so.
Okay, appreciate the opportunity. This was actually my second choice for an image. The first one was a little more dramatic. I removed a lot of distractions with Photoshop and did a lot of things with layers, and it was a pretty impressive before and after. But I thought for the purpose of this show, it would be more effective if I did a demonstration on something that's quick and dirty and goes very fast with minimum processing. And therefore I chose this image. This was from the Scavenger Hunt a couple of years ago. And what this was done exclusively in Lightroom and using the masking tool. And the masking tool, if you haven't used it, I really encourage you to play around with it. And there's different levels to it, but you can create some powerful effects. And basically what it does, it allows you to, in this case, select the subject or select the background. And select the background, you select the subject and click on invert. And basically what that means is you're working with two independent images. One is the subject only, and the other is the background only. And prior to masking, this could be done in Photoshop using layers and the whole drill, but it's time consuming. Basically, on the subject, I increased the exposure about 2/3 of a stop, added some clarity and vibrance, and very minimum processing. For the background, I dropped the exposure about half a stop and gave it a little bit of negative clarity. And anyway, you can see the difference there. This was very quick and dirty. I spent less than 2 minutes on it, and it was done entirely in Lightroom. And you can get some very powerful effects with minimum processing and minimum amount of time consumed. Anyway, I think masking has been a very, very powerful addition to Lightroom, and it's cut down the times I go into Photoshop quite a bit. Any questions?
Very good. I like it, Art. And it's nice and simple.
Yeah, that after picture really brings, yeah, again, the contrast and the colors, and I mean, they just look so much better than the not that the before was bad, but that after one really looks nice. And thanks for sharing that, Art. Before some of the people came on here, there were a few of us that were talking earlier about the power of Lightroom and with the new masking capabilities and so forth and that. So thank you for sharing your experiences and showing what you were able to do with those. It really has been a game changer within the Lightroom. And Adobe Camera Raw has those same features, but it's a game changer compared to Lightroom of a year and a half ago before they added those.
Yeah, amazing what you did. It looks like you cleaned it up and washed it and polished it. It looks awesome.
All right, so next one is me. And so it's kind of the same thing, like what same combination as far as what people have said. So you can see the image I started with. First thing I did was crop it down and then flip it. And then I did the same thing that like Chuck did. I brought it into Silver Effects Pro because I thought I want to do something with the black and white piece of it because I wanted to do something there. And then what I did with that is I think I used the high key, or excuse me, low key one was the filter, and pretty much the same thing that Chuck did. I applied it, really didn't do anything other than once I hit the button, I'm like, yeah, I like that. That's the way it is. And then I did bring it into, I always, when I bring it into Topaz and Silver Effects Pro, I always will look at the little zone map at the bottom to see if I have, it's 0 through 10. I think it's an Ansel item zone, and see if I have some of each of the zone tones in there, just to give it more of a, make sure it's more of a truer black and white. And that's easy. You just move over the screen or move over the image, and it'll show you with graphics on the image as to what, what's in that tone range. And then I brought it back out and ran it through Topaz for sharpening. Sharpened it up a little bit, and then I put a border. You can see the border around it. I did that in Lightroom, or not Lightroom, excuse me, Photoshop. Just playing with that, just to kind of finish it off. So really, didn't spend a lot of time. The raw adjustments in Lightroom, then cropped it, flipped it, brought it into Nick Silver Effects Pro, and then into Topaz Sharpen, and then Lightroom for the frame, and that was it. Your stunned silence is very reassuring.
It's very nice image.
I like that. Another good use of, again, Silver Effects Pro, and with the, using some of the high key black and white features. Having seen a couple of these come across tonight, that's something I'm going to have to start playing around. I use Silver Effects Pro quite a bit, but never really think much to use the, those high key filters. So. And
for those of you on the call, I'm still using the original Google free Silver or Nick filters. I mean, you can still download them, and I've never upgraded. And yet, knock on wood, I haven't had my Lightroom, my current version of Lightroom, or anything not work with them. So, and I haven't used the new one, so I don't know if I missed anything. But for me, it's worked all right, that one too. And then the other, you can see with the image on the right or the left, excuse me, there really wasn't a lot to that image. The sky, it was kind of in the evening when we took this, so that was about the best option I had, was to change it to this image on the right.
So Bruce, I don't, did I miss it, or did you do any like shadow adjustment like underneath the wing and that area to lighten that up, or does that come away with that?
No, I did in Lightroom. I did do the adjustments. I pulled up the highlights and the shadows and stuff like that.
Okay.
And yeah, and then when I was in the Topaz or in the Nick Silver Effects Pro, I think it lightened it up even a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. Yeah, it looks great. That's a great shot.
all right.
I like that the birds are in a row, but they're not like perfectly in a row, which kind of helps give it movement.
Yeah, and you can see from the raw image, that's their, other than I flipped them going the other direction, that was their position. So,
and all with the wings up. That's not enough touch too, right?
Yeah, I was trying a whole bunch of different things because I got so many pictures of, because when we went to Bosque and we've been to Alamos, I've got so many crane pictures. It's like, I gotta do something different because I got 10,000 crane pictures and I'll have 10,000 more that will all look about the same. So. All right, let's see here. Next is, look at my list, Jeff Woodward. If he is on the call.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Jeff.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Hey,
Well, first off, this is Cadillac Ranch. If anyone doesn't know where this is in Amarillo, Texas. I was in there for a day last summer, went out there, never been out there. So it's an art installation out in the middle of the field. It's not very far off of the interstate, so it's quite easy to get to. But went out there for a sunrise and got kind of lucky there with kind of a collapsing thunderstorm off in the distance. So this is not quite the original raw photo on the left. I actually did a 3-shot bracket for this. So this is the more of the sky exposure. I do have a lighter exposure for the foreground. And then I actually did an even darker exposure for those highlights, those highlights around the sun. So I typically do all of my editing in Photoshop. I'm a Tony Kuiper TK panel user for quite a few years. So I use a lot of his luminosity masks, etc., to do my post-processing. So I imported the 3 images into the Lightroom, into Photoshop as smart objects, and then just used luminosity masks to do the blending of each image. I got most of the information from those 2. And then I just used some blending in that darker image to get the highlights around the sun. I open them as smart objects just because I like to typically use the camera raw filters to adjust how the blending comes out. Once I was done with that, I flattened the image, cropped it to the 16:9 format that you see on the right-hand side there. Then I usually do image cleanup, go around the border. As you might be able to tell in the photo there on the right, there was a lot of spray cans on the ground. I just went around and kind of took out some of the outliers, some of the brighter oranges and pink lids that were kind of outstanding. I would have been there forever if I was trying to take out all of them. But after that, I created a sky and a land mask. I did some from there. It was a lot of local adjustments, added some contrast to both the sky and the land using curves, a little slight S adjustment there. I burned down, did some cloud sculpting to some of the darker clouds in the sky, so burned them down a little bit. I dodged in some color, so I picked out some of that yellow, orange, more yellow probably, around the sun, and dodged in some of that color into the sunbeams that are shining around from the sun. Some of the bright clouds at the very top of the middle were still kind of bright, so I kind of burned those down a little bit. They were kind of bothering me. I did use a saturation mask just on the cars themselves to bring out some saturation and also some lightness to make them pop. I did darken down a little bit on the left-hand side. The sky looks kind of dark on the screen now, but it was a little bit light, so I dumped that down. The darker clouds in the sky were looking a little bit blue to me, so I used the color grading, the new color grading option on the panel to use the kind of midtones and warm those up a little bit. So I did warm up those darker clouds a little bit. Added clarity to the cars to make them pop a little bit. Added a freehand vignette. So I used the lasso tool on the left-hand side and then the bottom of the image to darken those. I always add in a little spotlight. So I made a lasso tool or lasso around the cars, add a little bit of pop to those as well. And that's pretty much it. A lot of local adjustments to this image.
Sounds like you're an expert at Photoshop.
I've been using TK panel for a lot of years now, so I've got a lot of videos that I've been watching. So I've spent a lot of time watching videos on it. So
It sounds like we might have another guy to do a presentation for us.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure about that.
It's on my agenda this year to try to learn how to use that and maybe do some better processing.
Those TK panels are awesome. That's what I also use in Photoshop. And yeah, I've been using the Tony Kuiper stuff for a number of years now too. It's some pretty great stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. And they practically give it away for free. It's like $25-$30. So, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I use those too, but not to the extent that I probably should or could, but they are very powerful. I mean, there's so much in those. And
Yeah,
what you just described, you have a pretty strong handle on most of those features. So that's great.
I get a lot of the Sean Bagshaw videos, and I have almost all of his, and I go through them a lot. So he's extremely helpful in terms of going through the panel and learning that stuff. So it's a bit overwhelming when you get a new panel to learn the stuff, but his videos are amazing. I'm just a big fan of Sean Bagshaw.
Yeah, I've gone through some of those as well. Not
Yeah.
again, not start to finish. I probably need to sit there and do that someday. But he has a really good way of presenting those things.
Yeah, it makes learning, because this was around before all the luminosity masking was added to Lightroom, and it made learning the luminosity masking so much easier.
Yeah.
Because as you know, in the earlier versions of the panel, as you clicked through the different lights and the different darks, you could see what the masks were doing. And it was a good visual way to understand what how the masks were working and what they were doing. So yeah, it's a really good tool.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Good. And the next one is David Janine.
Yeah, there you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Anyways, this is, I guess it was a couple of years ago, my wife and I camped out on Lake Superior on the North Shore at a place called Gooseberry Falls State Park in Minnesota. And it was a stormy night, and our tent survived and we did, but early in that evening, or I guess it was getting kind of late, long after sunset, we went down to the lake, and there's some waves and crashing up against a billion-year-old basalt rocks there. It's a very interesting place if you get a chance. And the picture on the left is the one I shot. It's about a 1/4 second exposure on a tripod, and of course, the horizon's kind of tilted there. So that was one fix I made I did just about everything in Lightroom, and then maybe a little bit in the DxO tools too, or Nik tools. At first, my first attempt was taking it after I straightened it out and maybe brighten it up a little bit into Color Effects Pro, and ran it through, just tried a number of filters, and I was not happy with what I got. It kind of looked over processed and fakey to a certain extent. So then I went back to Lightroom, and of course it's improved quite a bit lately in terms of possibilities of doing things. So my goal here was to kind of add some color to this. Now, I also had a similar photo that I believe I submitted in a contest, a black and white version of this. And even after going through this exercise with the color, I think I like the black and white version slightly better, but here goes for the color version. So I came back into Lightroom, and just trying to add some color to it. And the color grading is kind of a nice tool, but it's kind of finicky, I think. But that's what I started with. I added boosted the reds to try to get that basalt to look more like it does in the daytime there, giving it some color. And it worked pretty good. But one of the problems with that is it made the water also look kind of muddy. And so I went back in and turned down, did some of the masking in Lightroom, in particular the area of water in the upper left there and lower left too. Those came out kind of red and muddy looking. So I just did a mask there and turned the temperature down on those, and I'm fairly pleased with the results. The other thing I didn't like about the original was that the spray up here, if I had to do it again, I probably would have exposed longer. But that spray looked, to me, it kind of looked like scratches in the picture rather than
time exposure water spray. So I used another mask on the spray area and just sort of took the texture way down. And also the dehaze, I did that way down, which, you know, dehazing to decrease the haze. In this case, I did the reverse. I wanted to add a little haze. So I think that helped in that case too. And then I also, after that, went into the HSL and also boosted some of the contrasty settings, the whites and the blacks, both quite a bit up to them, and increased the texture for the whole picture too. So, and then I went into the HSL, increased the aqua some, again, to counteract the kind of the muddy effect, the blue, and maybe the luminance on some of those I increased too. And then I think that's pretty much it for Lightroom. Then I took it back to the Color Effects Pro. And this time, instead of running a whole number of filters, I pretty much stuck to a couple. The polarization, that was kind of to increase the contrast there of the water and the sky. And then also I use the reflector effects on this. And I think you get your choice of 3 colors to imitate reflectors. And I use the soft gold on this one. And that kind of made the top of the rocks here a little brighter, especially this one here. And I think that helped some. Since I submitted this image, I've gone back into Lightroom and also increased some of the areas of the rock in terms of brightness and color and so on. And then maybe a slight glamour glow effect too in the color effects. And that's pretty much it. So I'm more pleased with the results than the original, but I think I still like the black and white better. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a cool shot. Very neat. Any questions? Oops. Okay, so our next one is Jim Stambaugh.
Okay, this was 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went downtown at sunrise and was shooting at Union Station, McGregor Square, and walked up the mall, and then ended up down here on Dairy Block. And the sun was getting up a little bit more. You can see Coors Field at the end of the alleyway. And so started out by just knocking down the exposure and, all in Lightroom, and then did a selected sky and inverted it, and then worked a lot on bringing out like that left wall. So you can see some bricks and a lot of brushes and changing, both sides left and right, a little more contrast. Did some radial filters to kind of pop the walkway a little bit. Also radial filters on the Lodo sign, that red sign, and there's another one back there, and brought those all up, kind of played around with the flowers and all. But I had a real problem, with the sky being blown out so much in Lightroom. All I could do was turn it completely black, and I'm pretty inept in Photoshop, but I thought, let's try a sky replacement. So grabbed a sky and found one that had a little bit of light in it that would kind of make sense with the lighting that we had there, and played around with that. So it was fun. I learned a lot on working with it. So it was a good exercise. So.
Yeah, very cool. Did you do any free transform or anything on it to try and straighten the buildings up a little bit, or just?
No, I was leaving it. I was shooting pretty wide angle. It was my 14 to 24.
Okay.
So I thought just before that, we had the photographer from Miami. So I was kind of inspired by some of the things he was doing on, instead of architectural, let's make it a little more artistic. So
Yeah,
Nice job on the sky.
yeah, this guy's cool. Did you
Yeah, that
change
really
one?
changed, yeah, that really changed the image, the
Yeah.
change you did that. And then consistent with that is, it looks like along with the darker sky there, also you have the nice darkening as compared to the original image over on that building to the left where the
Right.
sun was pretty bright on it, that it looks more realistic there with the way that it darkened on that right side, on that right image.
Yeah, there's a guy, my wife was looking at it. It's Pix Imperfect, I think it is, but he's got one creating realistic puddles in Photoshop. And the street scene he's got is very similar to what you have. So you might Google that on YouTube, creating realistic puddles in Photoshop, and watch that one, because you could probably that would probably be kind of cool with this one, because the sky looks really cool the way
Yeah.
it just changed the whole mood of that picture.
Right.
So anything else? Good. Okay, next is some guy we've never heard from, Darren White.
Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we had that kind of cold snap, and I had found this little place over by my house at Chatfield Lake that had partially frozen water, had some calm water, and it had like a little tiny cascade. So I had been over there probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, and it was either snowing or it was crystal clear skies, or it was not snowing, but it was gray skies. And so finally I got there one morning, and we finally had a decent sunrise. So I used a wide angle lens. I got down really low to the ice. It's kind of hard to see in here, but the ice should be pretty sharp from front to back. Anyway, so I did what I normally do. I exposed to the right as far as I could without blowing out the sky. So you see that in the middle, and that gives me the best exposure that I could possibly get without doing HDR. One thing with moving water and HDR is that they really don't go very well together, because the water is in a different position every time you take a picture. So this was I believe this was a single image, and basically I just took it into Adobe Camera Raw, where I do all my raw processing. First two things I automatically do are I remove the chromatic aberration on every single image. I check the lens profile to see if I want that box checked or not. I then move up to my color contrast, my tints, and just kind of work my way down. I don't do anything with texture. And then I don't really do much with like the color tones and all that stuff. I do most of the highlights and shadows up in the basic controls. So then once I get done with that, then I take it into Adobe Camera Raw, or not Adobe Camera Raw, but into Photoshop. And that's where I do my digital gardening, where I remove all the dust bunnies and all the little, like there might be twigs or something that are sticking out into the scene that I don't like. Get those all removed, and then once that's done, I will go into Color Effects Pro, and I pretty much do the same things on 99% of my images. It's brilliance, warmth, it's contrast only, soft color, soft focus, skylight filter, and light and dark and center. And those are pretty much what I do for all my images. And with the classic soft focus, you really can't tell that I've applied that, but I do apply it just a little bit. And then once I get those dialed in, then I bring it back into Photoshop. And then that's when I do any dodging and burning that I feel may need to be done in just specific areas. But one of the things that you can kind of see is that the sky right in the middle at the brightest point really didn't change any, because I wanted that feeling of, hey, the sun's coming up, you know, the sun's really close to the horizon. And so by exposing it just to where it's not blowing out, I may have toned it down just a hair, but it's pretty close to what the raw file was. So that's pretty much my processing on every image. Unless it's a night image, then it's a little different.
Well, you've going to show us that you got to be persistent. You said you've been out there, what, 4 or 5 days before you got what you wanted?
Yeah, Michael was out there one day. I mean,
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was out there one of the mornings, not on this one. I don't think I had these conditions, but it was. Although we may get these conditions this coming Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
I know.
But no, I was lucky to run into Darren one of those mornings out there on that and see him work his magic. So
Very cool.
Nice how the log is pointing towards the sunrise.
Yeah, I don't know. I found this area like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months ago. I don't know why I hadn't seen it before. And I probably went to this spot in the last 5 or 6 months. I've probably been to this spot like 25 times. And at the beginning of the year, I was going like every day because it was snowing and it was cold. And I'm like, okay, one of these days I'm going to get a good shot. And then this one morning, the sky lit up and it was really nice.
So Darren, do you tend to find a good foreground and then try to place a good sky or background behind it, or do you find good skies and then look around for a good foreground?
That really depends on where I'm at shooting. Like for this image in particular, I had been watching this ice melt and freeze over, a couple week period. And so in the very, very right-hand side of the corner, you can kind of see, it's a long exposure, but you can see where the water is kind of flowing over the ice into the pool below. And so I knew that I wanted the ice in my foreground to frame the image, to help frame the image. But I also knew that the sun was going to rise right in that spot. So it just kind of worked out that way. Now that this scene is completely changed, I want to get another shot where I'm over by the trees on the left-hand side, looking back towards this area with the sun setting. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that would be a nice contrast to this one. That'd be cool.
Yeah. This area is, I'll just tell you this, it's way more pretty when it's covered with snow and ice than it is when it's dry, because there's no grass or anything. It's like a gravel sandbar kind of thing. So the ice, this is a really neat area where the ice freezes in the still water. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of neat, but I don't think it looks as nice without the snow and the ice. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love the camera angle to really enhance that foreground. It's fantastic.
Thanks.
Beautiful area.
That's cool. And now I have to bribe Michael for the spot, the secret spot.
It's not secret.
The background that I just put up on my deal is fairly close to this, but not nearly as impressive as that.
Yeah, I mean, I hiked by this several times and just didn't realize it. And then one time I went over there when it was snowing, and that's when it caught my eye. I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. But yeah, it's just amazing how different elements can catch your eyes in different ways.
Yeah, it looks different in different seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, my background is the same in the fall, just right up from where you're at.
Yep.
Hey, Darren, those adjustments that you were mentioning, do you do those globally to the photo?
So the raw, yeah, in the raw file, when I do it in Adobe Camera Raw, I do them all globally.
Mhm.
And then when I do the color effects, so the one thing I like about color effects is that you can apply the settings, and when you open it back up, it opens it up as a new layer in Photoshop. So then you can kind of mask in, if something doesn't look right, you can mask it out, or you can make opacity adjustments with a brush at whatever percentage, and really dial it in well. But then once I'm done with that and the color effects, when I bring it back into Photoshop, that's when I'll do my dodging and burning. Like, so I brightened up the ice that's on the lower left fringe. Like I brightened the white part of the ice up a little bit. Maybe brightened up some spots on the log, just so it looks more natural and you have a little bit more dynamic range.
Got it.
But there's knowing what you can do with one image in your camera is, in my opinion, is a big part of being a photographer, because knowing what your raw files can handle is really going to dictate how you shoot a scene.
So let me ask you another question. If this is just a one-off picture and you're not focus stacking at all, if you were going to take something like this, would you typically be what, f16, or what do you think is, because you're really trying to get something in the foreground.
This was shot at this was shot at f18 with a 14-24 lens. So it pretty much, the foreground might not be perfectly in focus, but it's really, really, really close. If I were to do this, if I were to go back and focus stack this image, I would focus on the ice in the foreground in several different locations. And then I would focus on the ice under the log, and then focus on the end of the log that's pointing to the trees, and then focus on the trees themselves. And then I probably wouldn't do all the focus stacking in one foul swoop. What I would do is I would take the 5 or 6 images for the ice in the foreground and get one good image for that. And then maybe do some another set of images for the middle ground and get one good set of images for that. And then maybe a couple images for the background and get one image for that. And then I would take those 3 good images and put them together. So just so that I could mask in like exactly where I wanted the focus stacking to be.
Yeah. I'm kind of playing with my own lenses to see where the sweet spot is, where the most, where the focus falls off at, whether it's 18 or 22 or 20 or whatever. And it's different for each lens. And I know you can get away with a lot more with the wide angles, but I've almost taken to being somewhere at 16, 18, and then taking more than I want in front of the camera and then cropping up just a little bit so that the minimum focus distance actually is crisp.
Right. And that's good. Generally, and this isn't 100%, but generally speaking, with a wide angle lens, I would want to focus probably a third, not quite a half into the image. So the ice shelf that's underneath the log, right in that area where right, no, go left, right in there. So that's probably where I would focus this image if I were using hyperfocal.
Yeah, that's very smart. So
How far were you from the ice?
From the ice, it's in the foreground, probably
Mhm.
about 6 inches.
Oh, okay.
And it had water running over it, so it's kind of an optical illusion because I can see it looks soft here, but if there was no water running over it, it wouldn't, I don't think it would look that soft. Because the
Yeah.
water's adding to some of that softness.
Yeah, the motion blur in the water. Because
Yeah, because the ice over on the left of it, which is also about as close, right, is
Yeah.
sharp. So you can tell that it is that there's something going over that ice in the at
Yeah.
the right center. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I had several days to kind of study this scene and figure it out before this sunrise happened. Yeah, I should go back and look at all the images I took of this scene because I actually have quite a few just in different conditions. But this was the best sunrise I got during that time frame.
very cool.
Thanks.
Looks like Carino, you get to follow that. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah, this is over at Stirring Lake. This is the first bird I went there to see a wood duck, but this is the first guy I ran into. So I kind of liked it because of the mirror image. And what I do with these is, because usually they're pretty far away, before I even crop them, I use Topex gigapixel AI. So it kind of gives me some more pixels. So when I crop down, it still keeps some of the detail. So that's what I do with that. And then what I did with this one is I kind of wanted the background a little bit darker. So I use the Photoshop Lightroom masking, subject masking, and then I inverted it and kind of toned down the background. And then also did it again with subject and kind of worked on some of the light, bring down, it was too bright, brought it down a little bit, the lighting, the brightness, and a little more contrast. And then what I did was, after I finished all those, I went to Topaz Denoise and denoised it. And then I took it into Topaz Studio because I wanted the background to look not real, a little bit off. So I went into Topaz Studio and used the add look and used Buzz Sim. So I applied Buzz Sim to it, the look, and then I brought it down to, I don't know, about 80%. I brought it down to where I like the look in the background. And then I also went in and I changed the vignette, because usually the vignette that comes with this look is kind of like a rectangle. I wanted more of an oval looking. So I changed the vignette in the BuzzSim program there. And then once I convert it to BuzzSim in the look, I'll use a mask and a brush and I'll mask out the entire bird, the reflection image and the bird, so they don't have the look as the background. So they look real and the background looks not real.
So-
And, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so in Topaz Studio, I'm still learning that you can mask out the bird and then
Yes.
apply that filter.
Yeah, you can mask out the bird and not have that affecting the bird.
Okay, no, that's good. And then, yeah, that is really cool because the water on the left looks similar to what effect you got. So you really have to look to see that it's altered, like you said, but it
Right.
it
And
does.
I don't want to totally fake, but kind of.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's once you point it out, it's like, yeah, I really like that. So
And I kind of like the colored one, but I thought, well, let's see what it looks like in black and white. So then
Yeah,
I went to Silver Effects Pro, and I believe I used the full dynamic smooth. And I liked the way the image came out and how clear it came, and I was happy with that.
yeah, it's very cool. Because what's nice about it is you have a lot of branches and stuff, but when you go to the black and white, they just kind of add to the look. You didn't have to go through and try to clone out 8,000 branches.
Yeah, they kind of blend in.
Yeah, they blend in.
But
Very nice.
he's a pretty bird.
Yeah,
Yeah, the bird pops out better in the black and white, even though it's a white bird, you wouldn't think that that would be the case. But on the color, it doesn't, it's not as striking as it is in that black and white one.
And it seemed to stand out a little bit more.
Mhm.
what I'm going to do for the folks that are on the call at the end, I'm going to go through and show each one of these full screen, because when we did that one with Darren, it's like, yeah, I'll do it full screen. So we'll go through and step through them again, just full screen the raw and full screen the finished image so everybody can see it. Any other questions? I really like that, Carino.
Thank you.
So the last one is Kathleen.
Yep, I'm here. I'm on my iPad, but I've got my computer here too. So what I did with this was shot, I think it was a Lens Baby Soul handheld. And I took it into Lightroom and I adjusted the white balance a little bit. I cooled it off a little bit, added a little magenta, took the highlights down, shadows up, whites up, increased the texture just a hair and the vibrance. And then I put a subject matter mask on, inverted it, and I reduced the texture and the clarity on the background. Then I took it into Photoshop, and the whole reason for this was last week, and I got my hands on a photo of some rice paper, so I wanted to use it. So I imported the picture of the rice paper, Japanese rice paper, and I fooled around with adjustments on it, warmed it up a little bit and increased the contrast. And then I put a mask on it and I painted it off the center of the flower a little bit. And then I made a stamped copy. And, well, wait a minute, back up a little bit. On the rice paper, I used Lighten as the blend mode and the opacity at 48%, so pretty high. And then I made a stamped copy and I used Multiply for the blend mode on the stamped copy and opacity of 30%. Then I brought it back into Lightroom and I put a little vignette on it, a white vignette on it, and that's it.
Wow. A lot of light or a lot of Photoshop steps. Sounds like you're good at Photoshop.
Well, no. You guys with your TK panels, you really have me going there. I do a lot of stuff in Lightroom, but I do a lot of stuff with textures and overlapping textures, like more than one texture. I do a lot of flowers.
Yeah.
So they really lend themselves to some creativity with textures.
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was saying, and good job on creating your own texture as far as that background, as opposed to, there's a lot of those that are available out there for purchase or whatever in that, but good job on the thought of rice paper, creating your own, and then, like you said, some of the contrast adjustments that you did with that. That's That's a real creative element to it that you've added to it. When you did that, did you brush some of that texture off on like the center part of the flower, or is it just the way?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't brush it off completely.
Right.
But I did brush it off like the center part more, and then I kind of faded it out to where when I got to the outside petals, that pretty much was on there 100%. That I have to, true confessions here. I got this particular, I do my own textures, but this particular picture of rice paper, I got from somebody else as part of a class. So I got it and I thought, people were using it to shoot through. This is a long story, but anyway, and I'm going to do that. I've got it coming in the mail, the actual paper, but I just wanted to see what I could do with it. And then since then, I've done a couple more where I really alter the rice paper in Lightroom first and increase the texture. The whole idea being to try to get those fibers to show up a little more white than the background, a little more raised as they do in the original rice paper. So I've been playing with it more and coming up with, better ways to do it. But one thing with textures is once you get it over there in Photoshop, you can fool with it all you want and change the texture to look better with your photo. Maybe the color needs to change a little bit to blend in with your photo. And then you don't save that, you just have that with that particular photo. So, yeah.
No, very, very creative, and looks. I really enjoy seeing that processed image. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it looks
Thank
great.
you.
Do you have a couple of lens babies or just one? Or
I have the Sweet 50, and I use that for real close-ups a lot. And then I've got this Soul, and with the Soul, it's got little things you can pull down. I think it's 3 little wands that you can pull down to change the bokeh. But in this one, I think I was trying it without the wands, just the Soul itself. These things are really, I don't know how many of you have used them, but they don't have automatic focus.
right?
And both of those have kind of a little bellows where you can change the plane of your focus and change where the focus is within the picture, like up in the upper right or something. So I handhold them, and they're a little learning curve, but they're fun.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, because especially if you have the ones that pivot and whatnot, we got a couple of them. It changes with each. It depends on where you stand and how you pivot it, and but they're kind of fun. But you do get some cool things with them. So, but
Thank you.
I was curious because we got like the Velvet 85 and the one with the little I can't remember what it's called. It comes with a bunch of little discs to change the, you have stars and.
Oh, the creative bokeh.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun one to play with, but still learning how to use it. So.
Yeah, they all have a learning curve. I'm gonna get the twist next, I think, because I want to get that kind of circular bokeh you can get with twist.
Yeah.
Kind of twirls it around. So I think I'm gonna try that one next.
Well, watch depending on what camera you have, but check the used camera like MPB and KEH. Because I bought some stuff, I bought them off of there, and you know, it was a good savings for, because I think people buy them and then they don't really use them and then they sell them. So the ones I
You
bought,
got it at B&H?
no, it's one is called MBP. It's used cameras equipment, and the other one is KEH. And I got the Velvet for, it's the Z mount too, which is what I wanted, and it was like $200 off. I think I paid $300 for it, and they're normally $5. And then I got I needed the composer for the Creative Bokeh, and I got the composer with the 50 for like $95. So
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, so if you just look, and you know, you might find them, because like I said, I think people buy them and they use them for a little bit and then they're like, really, this isn't what I wanted, and then they sell them. So okay.
So that's KEH?
Yeah, KEH, and M as in Mary, B as in Paul, B as in boy, P as in Paul. And just look up used camera equipment. They should pop up. I think they're both in New York. It's kind of, if you're looking for something, a lot of times you can find it, and they have various, you know, conditions. The one, like I said, the ones I bought were still in the box, like new. So
Isn't KEH, aren't they like a spinoff or subsidiary of Adorama?
it could be. I look at both of them, and when I'm looking for stuff, and you know, sometimes there's a pretty good deal to be found on those things.
No, I've even
Thanks for
found
that.
I'll say I've even found KEH on eBay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the beginning and then show the before and after full screen for everybody, so that we can see in full screen. That'll make a little bit. So this is Michael's before. And then his after. And then this was Chuck's before. I think I have a picture like that, Chuck. But I don't have that picture.
I'm telling you, give it a try. You'd be amazed at how quick it is.
As you were describing this one, I'm thinking to myself, I've got to go back and look at some of my tree pictures.
Three pictures.
Bring in
Yeah.
the Silver Effects IT. They won't come out as nice as this, but they'll come out better than whatever I did with them before.
You'd
I
be,
think
you'd be
the
surprised.
secret is you have to be in Kansas, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know where the tree is if anybody wants to go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I've got it Google Map too.
Is it an 8-hour drive, 6-hour drive?
Yeah, this is probably closer to a 6, I would think.
Yeah. Because it was fairly early on in the trip.
Yeah, it was like the second day or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, then the next one is, well, this is Art's before. And then his after. I like the detail. I'm gonna have to
Really?
charge you. I'm gonna have to charge our little money for this, so because this statue is in Lone Tree, so he's from Highlands Ranch, so we're gonna have to.
I really like the color, how it was pretty muted in
As
the,
muted.
and like the gold trim, how it stands out like that against that darker gray. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Very cool. And then this is mine before. And then after.
The next meeting, we're all going to have high key black and white images.
And I say
right.
you already know how to do it. Now you just got to go find a tree.
Yeah, now I got the birds. I gotta get the tree. And this is Jeff's before. And after. And then we have David's before. And after. And then Jim's before. And then after. I do like that. Changes that mood quite a bit. And then Darren's, we can skip his before
Yeah.
with the dust bunny. There's a dust bunny there. And then after. And then Carino's before. And after. And Kathleen's before. And then after. Very cool. I'm recording this, so we'll post it back up on YouTube. I guess quick question for the group. Did everybody like this? You know, if you've got any suggestions on how to make it better, please email or let me know or tell me now or in the chat or whatever. It's kind of like as I was doing it, or Darren made the suggestion. This is a great suggestion, but I was thinking about it's like this could be an annual thing. I mean, it's kind of fun, and like you said, I learned a bunch of stuff tonight. I'm gonna have to rewatch the video because it's like I couldn't write fast enough for some of it, but there's definitely some tips that came out of it. And maybe the next time we limit the number, this is probably a pretty good number, but maybe we'll have everybody share their screen and maybe prepare a little, here's a couple, show you the steps that they did. Maybe not all of them, but a few of them, so that you can kind of see what's going on. Because I know as people were describing it, sometimes it's hard to visualize. Well, wait, where's that? Where's that on the Lightroom? So forth. Anyway, but anyway, if no one has anything else, I'm going to give you that.
Kathy has a hand up, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think that it should be an annual presentation or an annual part of the meeting. Because, we see for exhibition or the competition, and I always go, well, how did they do that? So I thought it was really neat and really fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's always, and it's hard to come up with 11 programs.
Yeah, and thanks, Darren, for coming up with the suggestion to do this and that. That was a good idea, and thanks, Bruce, for implementing it and getting that out there. But I'll echo that what everybody else said. I think it was a great. I mean, we learn on the exhibition nights, the competition nights, and so forth. But to hear tonight, more of it going into the specific processing techniques and that, there were a lot of takeaways from this for me.
When's the next exhibition night? You guys said June 1st?
Yeah, June 1st will be the next one. Yep. I think, if this doesn't fall, I mean, if we have a consistent amount of presentations like for the next year, to where we don't have an open presentation night, I think maybe we put this in as an exhibition night instead, because like Kathy said, it's one thing to see the image and you walk away wondering, or you reach out to the person after the meeting to say, hey, how the heck did you really pull that off? To now you have a recorded form here that you can go back and look at the images again and listen to the process. And I think it's a real good learning tool. So I think this is going to be a more often thing.
Yeah,
this again.
We can maybe even do the exhibition night where it's like, again, if they plan for it, it's like, the story behind the image, so to speak. Here's what I started with. Here's, you like yours, the tree in Kansas, or the, Darren's, thing, and the flowers, and it's all helpful because it really adds to the image once you get that background. Like Jim being downtown, and it's like, oh, you think about that. Never even saw that alley, but it's kind of cool. I might want to go down there and check it out. So, all right. Well,
just one more thing.
Sure.
So a while back, Kathy and Chuck sent me a whole bunch of images from past submissions to the Lone Tree Photo Club for the Instagram page. What I'm finding is that a lot of those people that had submitted stuff years back, they're not really part of the club now. And so I still want to try to promote the active club members that we have. So if you're on Instagram and you want, just tag Lone Tree Photo Club in your post. You don't have to send it to me. You don't have to do anything, and I'll see that, and then I can share it on. Our page, because I want to promote the active people. I don't really want to promote people who were in the club 5 years ago and they don't have anything to do with the club now. So I want to promote the people who are active in the club currently. So tag me if you just want it featured and you're not even on Instagram, send it to me in an email or send it to me on Facebook, whatever. It's easy to get a hold of me, and that way I can share it and I can give you credit for it. But again, I want to promote the people who are currently active in the club, not the people who are past members who aren't active in the club.
Okay. Good.
And thanks for doing all that, Darren. I know you've worked on that over the course of years and that. So thanks for.
Yeah, and I'm going to have some more free time too, because after September, our night photography workshops are done. So I won't be doing that next year. I'll be doing other things, but
Okay.
yeah.
He's gonna be our social media guru, resident expert.
I'm trying. You just got to have content, and then I so I did some shares this morning of people who shot the eclipse and whatnot. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, everybody have a good evening. Enjoy the snow on Saturday and
yep. Chatfield Lake Saturday morning.
be
You
there.
gave away the secret of the location now.
Yeah.
Be there at sunrise.
All right. See you guys on June 1st.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right.
Good
Everyone,
night.
have a good night.